You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during any question. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?
When the wolf is at your door, your running's over, that's for sure. He already knows all about you. Cut you down, no matter by you. Now you better walk the line. Real life, real
Warning, this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, may contain descriptions of acts of violence or that of a sexual nature and should be for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off of the internet or from some television show. The facts I'm retelling you were presented to me by the victims of the crimes or the perpetrators who committed the crimes against the victims. My descriptions of the crime scenes, what I saw with my own two eyes. If you're going to get offended, please turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Woody Overton. Today, I'm going to be concluding the two-part series, Eyes, the story of Leslie Dale Martin. And again, I want to give a shout out to all you Patreon convicts for being my subscribers. Couldn't do the show without you. I appreciate you. And all you lifers out there who make us grow, please continue to tell everybody about the show and subscribe and like and share and leave reviews and all that good podcaster stuff. But let's continue with Eyes. And when I left you last, I told you how Leslie Dale Martin just absolutely brutally murdered Christina Bergen in 1991. And I told you about the trial and the evidence against him and that the jury came back and found him guilty of first-degree murder. And then they went into the penalty phase of the trial, and they listened to what made it aggravating circumstances, which is the rape that he committed upon Christina and the brutality in which he executed her, which included he first strangled her with his bare hands, and he thought he'd killed her. But then she woke up, and he got a rope, and he tied it around her neck to choke her to death in a field beside a pump house in Iowa, Louisiana. But that wasn't enough. He then took a board and placed it on her neck and jumped up and down, up and down, up and down to make sure she was dead. That wasn't enough, y'all. He then took his knife out and he cut Christina's eyes out so she could never identify him as the person who committed his heinous crimes against her. Then he left her in that pump house in the Louisiana heat of the summer, where she was found 2 weeks later, severely decomposed. She had to have a closed casket funeral, and it's just horrible. Just horrible. But thankful for us, Leslie Dale Martin is a stupid criminal, and he told everybody that he did it. His friends, he tried to get his friend Russian to alibi him out and told him exactly what he did. Russian turns him in once he realizes 2 weeks later that Christina actually went missing from the 12th Street bar. And he told the cops, and the cops searched pump houses around Iowa, and they find her, right? And then he tells all these other people that he's locked up with that he did it, and he told them in detail, etc. So he's sentenced to death, Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola, and they ship him out to death row. So let's talk about that. And we're going to get into everything death row in the podcast Bloody Angola that Jim Chapman and I are doing. But I'm going to tell you today, for the purposes of the story, some of it. When you go to death row, you are housed in a one-man cell. There's no air conditioner. You get out 1 hour a day, supposedly. I think back then you only got out 1 hour a day twice a week, and that was to shower and a little bit of exercise. But you are housed with the worst of the worst. You go to death row in the state of Louisiana, you are one bad motherfucker. You are evil. You have done the worst of the worst, okay? There's another 5,000 plus inmates in Angola who most of them are down over 80% for murder or multiple murders. But they're not on death row. But they didn't cut anybody's eyes out and do all the shit that he did to Christina. But so he arrives in Angola. They put him in a cell. And I think his number was like 47 or something like that. I have to check on that. Put him in a cell. And his harsh reality becomes basically solitary confinement. You're locked up by yourself. You're on the row with the worst of the worst. Now, even murderers on the row hate rapists. Okay? There's a lot, let me digress. A lot of them are there because they raped and murdered, but the ones who didn't, the regular murderers and shit like that, they hate rapists and murderers. So they naturally are going to give Leslie Dale Martin a hard time, right? So he's doing the worst time that you can do, and he has an execution date. Unfortunately, in the state of Louisiana, it takes many, many, many years because of the appeals process. And you've heard me say it so many times that it costs so much more to put a person to death in the state of Louisiana than it does to house them for the rest of their life because of all their appeals process, which we pay for. Whatever jurisdiction that person is convicted in, those taxpayers have to pay for that appeals process, and it's in the millions and millions of dollars. Not to mention that they get all these court hearings and the appeals process, and the family, like Christina's family, had to suffer through all of it. All right. Martin hated it. The absolutely hated being on death row. And at one point, he had a death date of February the 8th. But at the last second, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, the guy who just died recently, y'all, during Trump's term, he halted the execution about 20 minutes before Martin was scheduled to enter the death chamber at Angola's Camp F. And Bloody Angola will explain to you about all the different camps and the letters, and every one of them is different. Some of them are all dormitories where, 200 inmates are housed in bunk beds. Some of them are cell blocks, and I like the worst back then used to be Camp J, other than death row. It used to be Camp J, but even when you're on death row, right before you get executed, they move you to Camp F, and they put you in a single man cell there, and you're by yourself. There's nobody on this tier with you. A tier meaning a long hallway that has several cells on it, and they put you in there and they put you on suicide watch. They take all your shit from you, and you're waiting to die. Okay, but they put somebody outside your cell to watch you 24 hours a day to make sure that you don't cheat the state of Louisiana out of their execution, meaning that you can't commit suicide, and they can make sure of that. So by the time they get to kill you, they don't want you to cheat them. And as far as I know, it's never happened. Nobody in the Death Watch is what they call it. The Death Watch cell has ever been successful in committing suicide before the execution. But so think about that. They take you off the row. You know you're going to the death house. You got your date. This is after all this pills. Y'all, he's been down a long, long time. And they put you in that cell, and at the last second, they come in and they prepare you. They dress you in your shit, whatever you're going to be executed in, and they give you, a last meal and prayer if you need it or whatever. You get to visit with your family members and what have you. Well, that's a hell of a lot more than Christina got. But he's getting ready to be executed, and 20 minutes before the execution, United States Supreme Court said, no, don't kill him. And they decided in March, they gave him a temporary stay, okay, in February while they discussed it. They would have got the briefs in the Supreme Court, and they're like, oh, shit, we're going to err on the side of caution. We're going to delay this execution, which happens all the time, y'all. At the last second, we're going to delay it while we review this case and decide whether or not we're going to look at it. And what they did was they started looking at it. And then in March, they decided not to hear Leslie Dale Martin's case. And the temporary stay of execution, that was Martin's fifth, okay? 4 other times he had been that close to death, but he got a stay. I don't think he was ever 20 minutes away from death, but he had his death date, and 4 other times during the appeals process, they delayed the death. But they decided not to hear it, and the temporary stay of execution was lifted. But this was because they got the temporary stay because Martin's attorneys tried to discredit the testimony of a witness they called a jailhouse snitch. Y'all, and this witness was the guy I told you about, Marlon Sweet. And Marlon Sweet testified that Leslie Dale Martin told him all the details of what he did to Christina, and that he raped her and killed her, okay? But a document got turned over to Martin's defense attorneys in February that showed that Sweet had been diagnosed as a pathological liar at the time of Martin's trial. So they're now saying, oh, well, you know what? His testimony, which was partially used, it wasn't the only thing by far, partially used to convict him and get him sentenced to death, can't be heard because Sweet had already been diagnosed as a pathological liar. Well, guess what? Sweet may be a pathological liar, may have been a pathological liar, but didn't mean he was lying about this. And he knew the details and no one else can know. And he only knew it because Martin was stupid enough to tell him. But in February, the defense attorneys failed to mention that Martin told a friend that Christina Bergen accused him of raping her, and that's why he killed her. Now, Louisiana law allows the death penalty only when there are certain aggravating circumstances in a murder. And in Leslie Dale Martin's case, the aggravating circumstances were that Christina's murder occurred during the process of this rape or because of this rape. Well, what do? Send him back to the row where he's been for years and years and years. Hey, y'all, there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to hair care. A product that works wonders for curls might make straight hair limp and greasy. Me, as I get older, I continue to have worsening dry scalp issues, and I need a shampoo and conditioner that really make my hair young again, right? So thanks to my personalized Pros routine, I can honestly say I've never been more in love with my hair. Pros makes custom hair care that's effective because it's personal, using natural ingredients with proven results. Pros customizes every product in your routine from shampoo to supplements. First, Pros starts by asking you, as a person, with their in-depth consultation. Pros ask me really unexpected things like, what's my zip code and what's my diet? And all these things I didn't know could affect hair care, exercise level, everything, right? It was a really detailed questionnaire. Next, Pros analyzed all my answers and determined what unique blend of ingredients should be in every product of my custom routine. Together, Pros got all my hair care goals covered. So I used the custom dry shampoo, but before that, I used the custom pre-shampoo hair mask. Really helps my scalp, y'all, makes my hair young again. As a carbon neutral certified B Corp, Pros is an industry leader in a clean and responsible beauty. All their ingredients are sustainably sourced, ethically gathered, and cruelty-free. They're also the first custom beauty brand to go carbon neutral. If you're not 100% positive Pros is the best hair care you've had, they'll take back the products, no questions asked. Pros is a healthy hair regimen with your name all over it. Take your free in-depth hair consultation to get 15% off your first order today. Go to pros.com/RLRC. That's PROSE.com/RLRC for your free in-depth hair consultation and 15% off. And then you would think of, death row like that. Let me tell you, in prisons, and we'll go then into this in detail in Bloody Angola, but in prisons, you get counted all day long, every hour. And now they have major counts and minor counts. And the major counts are certain times of the day. I'm not going to tell you when. Certain times of the day that they do a count, and all movement in the prison has to freeze while everything is counted, all the numbers. Every correctional officer counts their inmates. They have to call it in to the radio room of the control center, and the control center is the only one who actually knows how many prisoners are actually there. But they add up all the numbers, and the count has to clear. All the numbers that are called into them, meaning correctional officers actually physically counted that these inmates are still inside the wire at Angola, are there, and they add up the numbers, and they call it clearing the count, okay? And the count clears, then everybody gets to go back to work and shit like that. But death row, fuck, they ain't going anywhere. And, I'll tell you this. When I had 4 cell blocks that I ran, and 2 of them were administrative segregation, and 2 of them were working cell blocks, which are extended lockdown tiers. And I had to count them, especially during the major counts. Now, guess what? These people the working cell block had 2 to a cell, but the ones on admin segregation, there was 1 man to a cell. And they're not fucking going anywhere. Can I tell you that, and you're supposed to make around every 15 minutes per cell and actually put eyeballs on your inmate, and you go back out and you write it in a notebook. I can promise you that I didn't always make my rounds every 15 fucking minutes. It just didn't happen. And sometimes I would put in a logbook that I made a round if I didn't make the round. And for whatever reason, maybe I was in the bathroom. I don't know. But that's a common practice. But on death row, fuck, where are they going? They locked in their cell, right? And now these cells, y'all, these tiers, when I say tier, that's not you don't have cells on one side and cells on the other where they can look at each other all day long and talk back and forth. The cells are all on one side of the tier. Okay. The other side of the tier has a row of windows, which are barred over and screened over, so they can't really see out or anything. Sometimes they'll have one of those big fans in the window that circulates air on the tier. But these cells are all on one side. And so if they're going to do any kind of communication between each other, they do what they call kiting. That's when they pass notes. They'll get a string and they throw it down the tiers, fishing or kiting. They throw it down the tier. The next inmate will grab it with whatever through the screen and they'll pass it to whoever it goes to. The other way they communicate is through the ventilation system, not air conditioner people. The ventilation system behind their toilets. They can get in, and sometimes they communicate through the toilets. Talking down, they'll flush the toilet and talk through the hole, and it goes through the pipe system. The convicts are ingenious when it comes to shit like that. But the death row, you wouldn't think shit could happen, right? But guess what? Those inmates on death row have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to figure out how to operate. That's their life. The correctional officers are there for 12 hours at a time. Then they go home. The convicts never leave. The problem with that is, on death row, Leslie Dale Martin certainly had communication with other convicts, other death row inmates. Now, all the other camps I told you about, of course, are surrounded by razor wire and everything like that. In guard towers, most of them, with a guard up there with a rifle or shotgun. Death row has got to be, you think it's the most secure place in the whole prison, right? No way anybody can conspire. They might think about escaping. There's no way anybody's ever going to escape from death row because it's fucking death row. I mean, you're locked in your cell. You can't physically see anybody else unless they're walking past you to go take their shower or have their hour out. You're locked in your cell mostly 23 hours a day. How the fuck are you going to plan anything? Now, Leslie Dale Martin, no doubt in my mind, he's a dumbass. But that didn't mean he didn't hate the row. And he didn't want off the row. Mainly, he didn't want to get fucking executed. Remember I told you about the stay? He's 20 minutes away from going in and being strapped down on the table and being lethally injected. Well, I think that would light a fire under anyone's ass to try to do anything they could to get out. But death row? You can't get off that motherfucker, right? Wrong. In November of 1999, Leslie Dale Martin, and 3 other condemned men who were sentenced to die on death row rocked Angola when they escaped. Y'all, they didn't just escape from their cells. It's not like they just got out of their cells and they're locked in on the tier. Now, the end of the tier, it's not open. There's a door there. It's locked. It's controlled by a control center, or you have to have a key to physically open it. And we're going to go into detail on this because this is a big fucking deal. We're going to tell this story on Bloody Angola, but I'm telling you Martin's part. They not only escaped their cells, but they escaped the very building that housed death row. And they hauled ass. But guess what? When you escape the building, you still got to get outside the wire. The concertina wire. It's wired on top of fences and on the bottom of the fences. Lots of times it's stacked up 3 and 4 rows deep. And it's round wire that has razor blades all the way around it. Every inch of it has razor blades. And so the concept is you get into the concertina wire, you're going to get cut and you're going to continue to get cut and you get tangled up in it. But these 4 convicted, sentenced to death murderers or whatever the fuck they were, not only escaped their cells, they escaped the building and they escaped the wire. And they run for their lives. Thankfully, Angola has what they call their own chase team. Now, the chase team is made up of correctional officers who have bloodhounds. Okay? They show up to work every single day. They go straight to where the dogs are housed, and they train these dogs to track inmates in case there's ever an escape. And now I've used them many times. Angola's, DCI, different prisons, chase teams. When we had manhunts going on in law enforcement, shit, we called them out. You know why? Because they're the best in the world. And they literally let trustees come out however many days a week, come out and run. And they gave them so long to run, and they could figure out, they have it down to a science, how far approximately you've gotten since the last time you were seen. And they know to set the perimeter outside of that, but then the chase team goes, and they would let these trustees run, and the guards, the chase team would use the bloodhounds and track them down, and they always found them, y'all. Okay, but on this case, holy shit! Can you imagine being the correctional officer who goes down the tier because you're going to make your real count, your hard count, and you see 4 fucking death row inmates missing? Their cells are open, and they be gone. So you have to sound the alarm, and that sends the whole prison shut down. Everybody, if you're out in the field working on the line, they lock your ass up. Everybody gets locked down. There's nobody in the rec rooms. There's nobody on the yards. There's nobody in the prison laundry. There's nobody in the fucking kitchen. Everybody gets locked down. If you live in a dormitory, they tell you to catch your bunks, and you can't say a fucking word, and the whole prison is dead silent while these inmates are being pursued. Now, shit, we're going to tell you a million escape stories on Bloody Angola. This one being one of the most famous, but they do what they do. Chase team gets notified. Everybody's in oh shit mode, and they start tracking the guys. And I'm not going to tell you everything because I want to tell you on Bloody Angola. But they tracked them for a couple miles. All right. Now, Angola, thankfully, is surrounded by 3 sides by the Mississippi River. And if you've ever seen this part of the Mississippi River down south, you can look at the river and it'll be like a 50-foot oak tree. You look at the river and it's flowing south, right? But there's so much current and eddies in the river, there'll be a 50-foot oak tree going upriver while the other water's going downriver. It's crazy. To try to swim the Mississippi River, you're going to fucking drown if the gators don't get you, all right? But these 4 death row inmates headed for the river. The other obstacle on Angola is what we call the Tunica Hills, and they're fucking impassable. They're as close as to mountains as you'll get in the state of Louisiana, and they're full of deep ravines and just impenetrable. It's almost like, I say that some people can get out, I guess, but it's almost like another natural barrier. But these guys head for the river, and the chase team gets after them, and they get down to the swamp by the river, and they ultimately caught them. Now, when you're on the chase team, if you see the convicts that are running, you don't have to fire a warning shot. You shoot them to stop, technically, but you better believe if they were still going to run, they were going to shoot them. If they killed them, all the better. The price of a bullet's a lot less than the price of execution. But they caught them, y'all. They caught them down by the river, and we'll tell you all the details on Bloody Angola. But they bring them back, relock them up, then the investigation begins. Now, Burl Cain was the warden at the time, and I worked for Burl Cain when I was with the Department of Corrections before he went to Angola at DCI, and we had escapes. I've seen this man when inmates escape. I've been in the prisons when inmates escape. That's why I can tell you about the lockdown and everybody being locked down, et cetera. And Burl was relentless, or is relentless. And he not only would have a chase team, he would have all-terrain vehicles, ex-military vehicles. I mean, they knew what they were doing, people. They practiced it nonstop. But they catch them. And you would think they would be shot. No, they knew. They knew they were going to get killed if they didn't give up. So they bring them back. Investigation starts. And it turns out, unfortunately, as in so many cases, all the contraband, all the drugs, now cell phones, they didn't have them back in 91 and 93 when I was there. Cell phones are a big thing now, but 90% of everything illegal that gets into a prison is brought in by a correctional officer. Okay? One of these 4 men on death row bribed a correctional officer. Now, I'm sure that's a process that took a long time. They had to befriend them and then get their trust and everything else. And, you know, however they did it, we'll go into that on Bloody Angola. But they paid a guard to smuggle in hacksaw blades. And the inmates on death row, the ones that escaped, the convicts that escaped, including Martin, used the hacksaw blades to cut their cell doors open, okay? And then this didn't happen, y'all, in an hour or two. This happened over a 2 or 3 week period. Then they would get out of their cells, because remember I told you the guards don't always make those rounds like they're supposed to. They got out of their cells and they took turns cutting a window on the cell block, the bars off the window, using those same smuggled in hacksaw blades. And this happened over a 2 or 3 week period. Now, other correctional officers who never noticed, and you walking up and down this tier 15 times a shift or whatever, and you don't just go on counts. You have to go down with a nurse for medical call, and you got to go feed them and all this bullshit. You are always supposed to pull on the doors when you go by, but you get institutionalized and you don't do it. Had they pulled on any one of these 4 doors in this 2 to 3 week period, they would have seen that the door didn't lock. All right. They also damn well should have been looking at the windows, but in their mind, couldn't happen, right? But it did. So it was a combination of the one shitbag, punk ass correctional officer who was paid to bring in the hacksaw blades and knew it was going to happen the whole time. Now, what are you fucking thinking, right? You don't think these assholes are going to kill somebody? They're all down for murder or multiple murders, but you don't care because you got you a little bit of money. And how much money could they have? Anyway, then the other guards who happened to be assigned to that cell block, they're fucked also. Shit rolls downhill, right? And they all got in trouble, but nobody ever got prosecuted. But that's not it. You think it's over with. 2 months later, in January, 2 guards were listening, and sometimes they have what they call the pipe chase behind cell blocks. That's where all the plumbing runs for toilets and stuff. And they'll have a door off the cell block where you can enter the pipe chase. And sometimes I would go in the pipe chase and listen to inmates or convicts, or if I smell smoke, whatever, or weed, and go down there and try to find out which cell from the inside while being quiet. But somehow these 2 guards, whether they used the pipe chase or not, they heard Leslie Dale Martin talking to another death row inmate about their next escape attempt. And they were planning it out to the details, where this time they were going to take hostages. and use the hostages to get out of the prison. Never would have worked, people. Warden Burl Cain's rule was, you take a hostage, you're gonna die. And they teach you all about hostage training. If you ever be taking a hostage, we'll tell you about that in Bloody Angola. But Burl Cain was like, you know what? Fuck that. That's enough. He immediately had Leslie Dale Martin transferred to the death chamber holding cell at Camp F, which is several miles, y'all, from the death row building. And let me tell you this: the death row building is close. I always thought this was crazy. The death row building is the very first building closest to the prison gates. I never really understood that, but it is what it is. Now, Camp F, remember, Angola's over 18,000 acres, and all these camps are spread out, which helps cut down on escapes and stuff. But it also helps have inmates in the areas where they're going to work, like in the fields or the horse barns, whatever it may be. But he transfers him to Camp F, puts him in a single-man cell, and puts eyeballs on him 24/7 until his execution date. Now, I'm going to read you an article from the Lake Charles Press, okay? It says, convicted killer executed for the 1991 murder by Vincent Lupo and Sonny Marks. This was published on May the 11th of 2002. It says, Angola, Leslie Dale Martin was executed here Friday, nearly 10 years after he was convicted of raping and killing a Magnese student he met at a bar. Martin, 35, was declared dead at 8:16 p.m. He was intravenously injected with a combination of 3 drugs designed to put him to sleep, stop his breathing, and then stop his heart. He told Warden Burl Cain something directed at Martin's attorney, who was Clive Stafford Smith. They got him strapped to the table, y'all, and getting ready to inject him. And this is not an article, I'm telling you what happened. They're getting ready to inject him, and Martin turns his head sideways, looks at his attorney, and says, "You're fired." But he did it in a kind of light and funny way, Warden Cain said. Cain said Martin was calm and collected, and his demeanor was okay. He said he showed very little reaction. And Cain told him right before they inject him, y'all mad-libbing part of this, but Cain told him what he always tells the condemned. He said, "Be ready to see Jesus' face." And when the injections began, Martin said to Cain, "When am I going to feel something? I don't feel anything." "You're going to feel sleepy in just a minute," Cain told him. Martin left his glasses on until minutes before he died. Cain said Martin wanted to see the witnesses and his spiritual advisor, humanist Paula. Boom, Jim. Humanist Paula Emmanuel, who was from the Netherlands. Emmanuel said after the execution, any criminal has been many times a victim before. The parents of the murder victim, Christina Bergen, witnessed the execution. Both smiled at the news conference afterwards. "I'm just happy," her mother, Diane Gudo of Lake Charles, said. "My smile says it all," said Bergen's father, Charles Bergen of Lake Charles. "My smile is all I've got to say. I'm finished with him." The parents stood up and left the room as Stafford Smith stepped to the microphone. Martin did ask me to say some things, and one was that he is indeed very sorry for what happened, and so am I. Very sorry for what everyone has gone through, he said, but I don't want people to be left with the impression that this is somehow someone who is cold and calculating. We are all better than the worst things we ever did in our lives. I'm very sorry that everyone feels that way and can't see past the worst thing each of us ever did. Last-minute efforts to halt the execution failed, unlike February the 8th when Martin won a reprieve from the U.S. Supreme Court less than 30 minutes before he was scheduled to die. 13 witnesses watched last night as Martin breathed his last at 4:45 p.m. He ate his last meal, boiled crawfish stew, toasted French bread, garden salad with Italian dressing, banana nut oatmeal cookies, and whole milk with chocolate syrup. Boom, Jim. All right, yeah, I'm going to skip down. I'm going to read you part of this execution timeline because I think it's important. So he's housed in the death cell, right? And the death cell is only like 20 yards from the execution chamber. But it's a process. He gets to have his last visitors, his last meal, and shit like that. But there's two sides that witness every execution, and it's limited to a certain number. There's the victim's family. Then there is the person that's going to be executed's family and whoever, I think two witnesses they want. And I think that they usually do a lottery drawing for 2 members, maybe 4 members of the media. They get to witness it so they can report it to the public. It is not publicly televised or anything like that. But at 7:45 p.m., the 13 witnesses are led to the death house. That's where he's housed in a cell, and that's where the execution chamber is, y'all. The viewing room is divided into 2 segments by a wall and a sliding door. Members of the victim's family and a Lake Charles TV news reporter are among the witnesses on one side, and Martin's attorney and the West Feliciana Parish coroner and 2 print media reporters are included on the other side. At 7:50 p.m., Richard Stalder, the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety and Corrections, hands documents to Martin's attorney, Clive Stafford Smith. The paperwork indicates the U.S. Supreme Court's refusal to halt the execution. 7:52 p.m., similar paperwork is handed to a representative of Governor Mike Foster. The representative is also a witness to the execution. 7:58 p.m., Martin is led into the death chamber. His spiritual advisor joins Stafford Smith in the witness room as 10 straps are used to tether Martin to the gurney. Laughter and loud talking can be heard from the family side. And they mean Christina's family side. The mood and on the other side is somber and subdued. That is Martin's side. Stafford Smith and spiritual advisor Paula Emanuel embrace each other, hold hands, and at times wipe tears away. Martin is seen mouthing inaudible words to Emmanuel through the glass. At 8 p.m., the window curtains that surround the death chamber to y'all, so that the witnesses don't see him getting strapped down and all that, they're opened. Boom, Jim. At that time, the witnesses, now remember the family, Christina's family can't see his family. They're separated by a wall. But at this time, when the curtains are open, everybody sees him strapped down to the table. Warden Burl Kane is in the room. Oh, one of the reasons they have the curtains closed is that's when they're putting the IVs into Leslie Dale Martin's arms, and they keep the curtains closed so that the technicians who are actually inserting the IVs remain anonymous. But curtains open, they read the death warrant to Martin. They ask him, Burl Kane asked him, do you have any last words? Martin didn't have shit to say. They start the injections. he asked Warden Kane, when am I going to feel something? I'm not feeling anything. And of course, takes a minute or two. He gets knocked out, and the other 2 shots follow, and he's executed. And the fires of hell burn a little bit brighter as he rode that light. And I think because of what he did to Christina, I don't know. It's not my place to judge. If it was in a perfect world to me, because what he did to Christina, he would have went straight to hell, and he's burning for eternity. Anyway, I'll go back to it. 8:05 p.m., the curtain is open. Martin speaks frequently with Warden Burl Kane, who remains at his head the entire time. The words cannot be heard by the witnesses. Sound is only turned on if Martin has any official last words, and he declines to make a statement. Martin has a monitor clipped to his finger and tubes running into his wrist and stomach. He is dressed in a white T-shirt and white pants with prison-issued slippers. Several minutes after Martin's chest stops rising and falling, his face and hands turn blue. Kane gets the flatline signal from monitors. The warden signals for the coroner to enter the death chamber. 8:16 p.m. Both the coroner and the medical director of the prison check Martin's chest and neck with a stethoscope. They pull his eyelids up. They declare over the microphone that Martin is officially dead. Martin's body is sent from the death chamber to the prison morgue, where it will be held overnight. Martin's family will get the body Saturday. Kane says they intend to cremate him. So that's the end of Leslie Dale Martin, y'all. Heart goes out, man, to Christina's family. I just can't imagine. And I don't know if they're still alive or not still alive or whatever. That's been another 23 years ago, but any of her surviving family members, my heart goes out to you. Leslie Dale Martin, I'm thankful he was executed. And they used to call it riding the lightning when they used the electric chair, and we'll tell you about that in Merakey, Angola. But now they call it riding the needle, right? He rode the needle. I think hopefully he's where he should be. But the family getting to have eyes on Martin as he turned blue, it'll never bring their daughter back. But it's a little bit of justice. And I'm going to conclude the series, Eyes. I thank everybody for listening. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Patreon convicts, love you. If you can't be a Patreon convict member, I totally get it. Check out the Real Life, Real Crime Community app. It's free to download from the App Store. Today, I was released from Facebook jail for the first time. I don't even know what they put me in for. That's another reason that we started the app, and I'm checking the app first. I can promise you that. But I have I can't knock Facebook. We got over 38,000 on our private group, the crew page. I've got like 5 other Facebook pages or more now with Scorched Justice and Bloody Angola and all that. But check out all those things. Follow me on Instagram at Real Life, Real Crime, at Overton Woody, at Scorched Justice, at Bloody Angola. Follow me, and wherever you listen to a podcast, if you would, leave me a review and subscribe and all that good podcaster stuff. And Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, those are my people. They are nonprofit, saving lives every day. If you want to be an organ donor and you haven't signed up, and you're a lifer from Guatemala, Go to LOPA.org. Take about 2 minutes. Fill out the form. You don't have to be from Louisiana to become an organ donor. Give the gift of life, sight, and all that good stuff. Be a hero. And I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And until next time or ever, don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou. Peace. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during any question. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?
When the wolf is at your door.